Assalamu alaikum. I'm Amir Mohammad Emami. Uh, um, I'm a PhD candidate in Islamic Studies at the University of Exeter, and it's my pleasure to be at this conference. And first, I would like to thank the organizers for organizing such a wonderful event and for giving me this opportunity to present my work. It's a work in progress, so I would appreciate your comments and suggestions. The title of my presentation is An Inclusive Exclusivist, Mirza Mahdi Isfahani on the Diversity of Religious and Mystical Experiences. In brief, I will talk about the possible solution to the issue of the diversity of religious and mystical experiences, inspired by the viewpoint of a quite recent Islamic scholar, Mirza Mahdi Isfahani. First, I will give some I will give some introductory notes on the definition of religious and mystical experiences and their categorization. Then I will briefly discuss the argument from religious experience. And finally, I will turn to Mirza Mahdi Isfahani. And by introducing him, I will elaborate on his view on religious and mystical experiences. Religious experience is undoubtedly one of the significant aspects of religion in general. For example, in his definition of religion, Ninian Smart identifies the experiential dimension as one of the 7 prominent dimensions of religion. Religious experience could be roughly defined as an experience that seems to the person who has it to be of some objective reality and to have some religious import. Although some early contributions to the debate, like that of Friedrich Schleiermacher and Rudolf Otto, use the term feeling in defining religious experience as feeling of absolute dependence and feeling of the nominus, it is important to distinguish between religious experiences and religious feelings based on the definition previously given. Um, Although religious experiences might be thought to be caused by some objective reality with religious imports, for instance, God, they are not considered as a kind of perception and experience of external objects, which is the difference. Religious experiences can be are categorized in various ways by different scholars. For example, in well-known classifications, they are divided into 4 groups based on the mode of experience. I will skip some details to keep my presentation in time. Um, Another categorization is based on the phenomenal content of religious experiences rather than the mode of experience. Keith Yando's categorization is one of these categorizations. And as you can see, they are, such experiences are divided into 5 categories. The one that we are talking about is monotheistic experiences. Most notably among such experiences, there are some theistic experiences that represent an infinitely perfect personal creator, and some mystical experiences that represent the impersonal ultimate reality, which result in conflicting concepts of the divine nature, as shall be explained. Mystical experience is a close concept to religious experience, which is defined in various ways. In a broad sense, it is quite the same as religious experience as previously defined. Uh, in this sense, mystical experiences are classified into different categories, such as extroverted versus introverted, dualistic versus monistic, theurgic versus non-theurgic, and apophatic versus cataphatic. However, in a narrow sense, mystical experiences are limited to monistic and unitive experiences that involve some kind of union with the ultimate reality. This ultimate reality is interpreted as identical with God by followers of Abrahamic religions and or Brahman by Hindus, or even understood in a non-religious way. During the process of extreme monistic mystical experiences, all duality seems to fade, and the person who has the experience reports the absolute ontological oneness of everything and considers all distinctions as illusory. By contrast, in the process of dualistic experiences, the distinction between the subject and the object of the experience remains the same. So unsurprisingly, such different experiences lead to different concepts of God and result in diverse metaphysical and theological views. While some experiences are taken as a basis for classical monotheism and the transcendence of God from the world, others are seen as a basis for some form of pantheism or panentheism. In contemporary philosophy of religion, some scholars have argued for the existence of God based on monotheistic religious experiences. They have different accounts, and I will not go into details. And there are also some objections to these accounts, among which the most significant is religious diversity. The solution to this problem for the arguments based on religious experience are different. One is exclusivism, which is accepting some experiences that are associated with one religious tradition, for example, Christianity or Abrahamic religions in general, and rejecting others. The other approach is pluralism, which is seeking a common core to all religious experiences, which might seem problematic at first sight because of the diverse phenomenic, phenomenological diversity among experiences. But this approach was adopted by John Hick by using the Kantian distinction between phenomenon and noumenon and arguing that the variety of religious experiences are related to the level of phenomenon and not noumenon, which he calls the real. So based on this, all experiences are manifestations of the real, as he calls it. As I find these solutions all problematic and there are different objections to each of them, I'm seeking an alternative solution to this issue of diversity of religious experiences. And in this regard, I will turn to an Islamic scholar, Mirza Mahdi Isfahani, and I will briefly introduce his view on this issue. Well, Mirza Mahdi Isfahani was a Shia scholar born in Isfahan, Iran. Um, he first studied Islamic intellectual disciplines in Iraq, and among his educators, there were many Shia authorities of the time, famous Shia authorities of the time. And then he returned to Iran and went to the city of Mashhad in Khorasan, where he actually established a theological school, which later became known as Maktab Tafkik or Maktab Ma'arif Khorasan. The main thesis of this school is that the Islamic doctrines should be separated from the teachings of philosophy and mysticism and be based on the holy scriptures, especially the Quran and the Hadith. Um, and the idea is that uh, philosophical and mystical theories that are common in the Islamic world contradict scriptures as well as true reason and knowledge. So he didn't believe that Islamic doctrines are irrational or contradict reason, but he thought that true and genuine reason and knowledge are different from the philosophical theories that are common in the Islamic world. Uh, the followers of this school are widely identified with their rejection of Islamic mysticism and Islamic philosophy, especially as developed by the famous Shi'i philosopher Mullah Sadra, whose thought is still the common philosophy in Iran, and thought at the seminaries and the universities. Isfahani opposed Islamic philosophical and mystical ideas and expressed his theories on a variety of subjects. Um, well, his main concern was religious epistemology and how God is conceived according to philosophical and mystical traditions. And with regard to Islamic philosophy, he criticizes the epistemic and metaphysical basis of the arguments for the existence of God. In brief, he claims that such proofs are unnecessary and they are needed for belief in God because people possess an innate knowledge of God which only needs to be noticed and awakened. He calls this innate knowledge of God by using Islamic terminology fitra, and argues that everyone, as a result of possessing fitra, knows God from the beginning of their creation, although they might not be aware of this knowledge. But different occasions cause people to notice God without any prior philosophical training and without familiarity with the arguments for the existence of God because of this innate knowledge. Isfahani mentions several causes that awaken fitra. I will not go into details here, but the point that he emphasizes is that one's awareness of God might vary when, for example, seeing the signs of God or facing natural disasters or hearing the prophets and the imams reminders of God or reading the Quran. Um, the reason, according to him, is that the cognition of God or ma'rifatullah comes in infinite degrees. Therefore, after acknowledging God and becoming faithful, one can attain a higher degree of this knowledge by obedience and praying to God, for example. Or on the contrary, committing sins causes a major obstacle to becoming aware of God and prevents the sinful from reaching the higher grades of this knowledge. Islam uses different terms for referring to the high levels of the awareness of God and says that this awareness is directly caused by God. And one knows, Ismail doesn't use the term religious experience, but his expressions are quite close to what we now identify as religious experience. For example, he says that one knows God and directly perceives him solely by direct divine action through the eyes of the heart. Well, although, as I said, Usmani does not use the term religious experience, we can use his idea to find a solution to the problem of religious diversity, as previously said. Um, one thing that I want to note here is that Isfahani also refers to such experience as a legitimate and unquestionable basis for monotheism, and he conceives rejecting God after becoming aware of his presence as an improper behavior and an unforgivable sin. And the kind of experience that he considers valid is the dualistic theistic experiences of God, which corresponds to the Abrahamic and particularly Islamic classical theism. He relies on experiences of God as a totally transcendent object who is distinct from the self and all other creatures. Based on such experiences, God is neither identical to any other being, nor does any other being contain or surround God, as it is the case with regard to pantheism or panentheism. Well, but what is Isfahani's view on mystical experiences in the narrow sense? That is the monistic unitive experiences uh, um, were common in Islamic mysticism. Mystics often believe in the unity of reality with God based on having unitive and monistic experiences. The state is sometimes called al-fana fillah in Islamic mysticism, which is the last stage of the mystical journey. And in this state, one sees nothing but God, and anything else, even the subject of the experience, seems to fade in the object of experience, which is considered to be God. And this is because all beings are thought to be nothing more than this unity and oneness. And all perceptions of diversity and multiplicity are considered to be some kind of illusion, as claimed. These experiences led some mystics to argue that nothing is real other than God and that everything else is illusory in a sense. And the view resulted in the theory of Wahdatul Wujud in Islamic mysticism as developed by Ibn Arabi, who also had a great influence on Mullah Sadra. In his view, existence is one and simple, and all the multiplicity and diversity that appear are its manifestations that do not have any genuine independent reality from existence as such. This unique existence is thought to be God and identical with all that seems real, without considering any differences and distinctions among them. This theory is clearly at odds with Isfahani's view on the transcendence of God from all creatures and the absolute dissimilarity between them. However, in rejecting mystical theology, interestingly, Isfahani does not discard mystical experiences totally. Rather, he attempts to harmonize such experiences within his theology by reinterpreting them. To explain Isfahani's stance against mystical experience, I should give a very brief overview of his theory of the human self and existence. Based on Isfahani's view, all beings are totally dependent on God in their nature, existence, knowledge, power, and all they possess. When God wills to create things, he makes them existence and assigns various natures to each of them. In the case of human beings, God gives them each of them a body and a soul, but neither their bodies nor their souls are identical to their true selves, as they are not what constitutes their true identity. Since no change in the characteristics of the body or the soul alters the identities of people. A human being, according to this theory, is not essentially human and not even a being, meaning that it could have been non-human or could have been non-existent. It is God who decides to make someone existent and make them a human being. The true essence of anyone is what they refer to by the word I in English or ana in Arabic, which remains the same all through people's lives. Isfahani uses the term aniya here to indicate this selfhood or I-ness, and draws a contrast between this and what he calls Anwar or Nur, as shall be explained after this part. Okay, so Ismani calls the essences of human beings and all other creatures Zulmani Zat, are essentially dark, meaning that they don't have any light in themselves. So what is light in Isfahani's theory? Light is actually what these dark entities possess, such as knowledge, reason, power, and as Isfahani says, existence itself. So Isfahani says that existence is also a light, that God is the original possessor of that light, and God gives that light to any creature that he wants to create. And by giving this light to creatures, he creates them and makes them. So in this view, there are three levels: God, Nur, light, or the creation, the act of God itself, and Zulma, darkness, which is the essence of what creates. And creation is giving the light of existence to these certain dark entities. So, based on this metaphysical framework on self and existence, Isfahani reinterprets mystical experiences, and he argues that mystics in their experiences perceive something real, which is actually the light of experience, the light of existence, which is the vast, ultimate, unlimited reality that all creatures possess and are existent as a result of possessing it. Nevertheless, Isfahani criticizes mystics for committing two fatal errors. First, they neglected the genuine essence of themselves, the zulmatu zati, and the essential darkness that has no light in itself, and they considered it as identical with existence, which is actually a light, not darkness. Second, they wrongly assumed that the light of existence is identical with God and claimed that all beings are identical with God mistakenly. According to Isfahani, this is why mystics call this state al-fana of Allah, fading in God, while in fact there is no real identity either between the creatures and the existence or between them and God. Well, setting aside all these complexities and ambiguities in Isfahani's theology and metaphysics, which I could not thoroughly cover in this brief presentation, his central idea is to preserve the epistemic validity of mystical experiences on the one hand, and holding on to a monotheistic conception of God on the other hand. Isfahani aims at this goal by reinterpreting the mystical experiences in a way that is consistent with his concept of God as a transcendent, holy other being. And okay, there are also some other things that could be said here. But anyhow, Isfahani's view on mystical and religious experiences is just as instance of a somewhat different approach to the diversity of religious experiences, namely not to take them as manifestations of the same reality as Hicks did, for example, nor to reject the experiences other than those related to one's own tradition, as Plantinga and Alston did, for example, who are exclusivists, but to understand them as perceptions of different phenomena in a consistent way. This approach, if appropriately exercised, avoids the problem of the two other solutions. Otherwise, our solution to the diversity of religious experiences would face the issues of neglecting the specific features of each experience or rejecting them without any epistemically valid justification. In the end, more philosophical inquiries are required to conclude whether this approach could provide a proper solution to the problem of religious diversity or if there are any other objections as well. Thank you for paying attention to my presentation, and I would be glad to hear your comments and suggestions, if any.